These are 7 books that made me an articulate speaker. Number 1, HBR Guide to Persuasive Presentations. The reason I love this book is because it's exactly what it sounds like, the rare case of judge a book by its cover. It goes through exactly what you need to do to have an amazing presentation. Some of the things it really focuses on is the audience. Now I know you've heard this, prepare a presentation according to the audience, but this goes into so much detail about knowing what beliefs your audience has, how to change those beliefs, how to make sure you never walk into a presentation without knowing what thoughts they will have, how they will challenge your beliefs. The other things that I really like about this book is it mentions specific things that you can do in remote presentations. It mentions what you can do with certain software. It also mentions how you can put together small stories and slides to make sure that your message gets across as clear as possible. A lot of people make this mistake where they put in so much information into a presentation and people have no idea what they're talking about because there's too much information for them to process. This book makes it very, very clear how to take a lot of information, make it very, very concise and easy to understand for you and for your audience. If you are looking for a step-by-step process to put presentations together, sound crystal clear, especially in business environments, this is a book you absolutely need to have in your toolkit. The second book is called How to Talk to Anyone, 92 Little Tricks for Big Success in Relationships. You can look at the condition of this book and know how long ago I bought this book, but I've still kept it because it's a very, very useful book. What I love about it is if you just go to the table of contents, you can read each and every single topic and go to the one that you really need. So for example, it has some like how to create a friendly private joke with people, how to make them smile, how to praise with perfect timing, how to make the sale with your eyeballs. All of these specific tips, I really, really like books that outline tactful techniques that you can use right away. This is the exact manual you need. One of the ones that I remember implementing was something called sticky eyes, if I'm not mistaken, which essentially said, if someone walks in and you haven't met them before, instead of smiling the entire time and when they meet you smile again, you save your smile. You don't smile all the time. You have a straight face, you look at them, and when you meet them, then you smile. This tiny change shows that it's their presence that made you smile. You're not just a smiley person. These are things that I would have never really thought of. A lot of other things around, if you're someone who's socially awkward and you don't know how to make small talk, this will really give you tactful things that you can use, and you can see there are pages coming out of it. But again, a very tactful book that you can implement right away. Now, these next few books might confuse you a bit. You might think, what the heck do they have to do with articulate speaking? But bear with me here. The first one is called Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents, Storytime. When I was growing up, my dad raised me by himself, and I wasn't really around anyone most of the time, and he was really stressed out with his business, so he couldn't really give me a lot of attention. And then when I went to school, a lot of my teachers were very strict. If I raised my hand and I had the wrong answer, they would embarrass me in front of everyone. So at a very early age, I learned not to participate. I learned to suppress what it is that I have to say. What does this have to do with articulate speaking? This is what it has to do with articulate speaking. You might know the topic inside out. You might know everything about what you want to talk about. You might be very, very confident with certain people. But when you are in front of people with more authority, new people you haven't met, all of a sudden your mind starts going, should I say this? Should I be the one talking about this? Am I a good enough person to deliver a presentation about this? Why is this happening? Because the problem is not you lacking a skill set. The problem is self-esteem. You are so trained on being invisible that being in front of people is a problem. Not the skill set of speaking, but the pressure that comes with being in front of people. And a lot of that has to do with how we are raised. A lot of people have parents who, if they were crying or they were in need, the parents would scold them more, like, hey, why are you crying? So now they've learned to shell themselves up and not open up emotionally. One of the biggest lessons that I learned from this book is a lot of times you know your material, you're the subject matter expert, but because you don't see the value in yourself, you have imposter syndrome, you have self-doubt, and therefore you don't speak. Therefore, you cannot articulate your ideas confidently. So this book is more about how do you remove the blocks in your head that allow you then to speak freely and more articulately and be less filtered in your day-to-day life. One of the best books that I've read to understand your childhood and how your habits as a child, how your parents, the way they parented you, how that affects who you are now. So if you're someone who's very confident with friends, but all of a sudden you freeze up in front of your boss, this is a book that I would highly recommend you read. Continuing with the theme of weird books, this next one is called Healing Back Pain. Now you might be wondering, what the heck does healing back pain have to do with becoming an articulate speaker? Well, let me tell you, I had a lot of back pain, and when I was doing deadlifts, as a teenager, I hurt my back and I never did it again. And not just that, but then I would have pain sitting in a chair, sitting on a plane. I couldn't watch a movie because it would get too uncomfortable. I couldn't even bend over. And I started to realize, hey, I'm in my mid-20s. Why am I feeling so much pain? What is going on here? I was recommended this book after that, and the big promise of this book was you read the book and you will no longer have back pain. How is that possible? Read a book, no more back pain? The author, Dr. Sorno, he talks about how when patients come to him, they have one of two types of problems. One is a physical problem, where there's something wrong with their body. The second one is a mental problem. And he said more often than not, in his case, the mental problem was a real problem, but people went to get physical solutions. So if they have back pain, they would get a cushion for their back, they would get surgeries for their back, but they wouldn't solve the root cause. And in his opinion, the root cause was stress. When people are stressed out, the body stores the stress in different areas, and then that results in inflammation and pain. So he said, instead of going to get surgeries, because that doesn't fix the problem, you fix the stress and your pain will go away. Now, what does this have to do with articulate speaking? It helped me realize how important belief was when it comes to shaping your identity. Because my whole life, I thought I would never be an articulate speaker. I am an introvert. I'm not born to do this. And I would live my life that way. So what happened was I told myself I wasn't a good speaker. And when I would speak, I wouldn't speak well, and that would feed my belief of me not being a good speaker, and that would turn into this endless vicious loop. So when I read the book, I figured, what if I applied the same concept to my speaking skills? What if instead of believing I have some lack of skill set, some lack of confidence, I am an articulate speaker, and my definition of being an articulate speaker is I can say what's in my mind, I can feel good about it, and the message comes across clearly. So when I changed that belief, now all of a sudden, I started to see progress. I allowed myself to see all the things that I was doing well. I allowed myself to only focus on the things that I really, really needed to focus on. Because previously, I would scrutinize everything. You had one up, you looked away for 1 second, you were looking down for 1 second, or your posture wasn't great. All of these tiny things that ultimately don't really matter. So if you are someone who wants to see how far a change in belief can take you when it comes to becoming an articulate speaker, when it comes to becoming who you've always wanted to be, this book is amazing. Even if you don't have any back pain, but you have some lingering issues in your life or lingering beliefs that won't go away, read this book. I promise you, it's going to make you an articulate speaker, not just with the message in the book, but also how it's written, but it's also going to affect your life in many other ways that will help you. The next book is called Think Faster, Talk Smarter. I love this book because I have seen the author's talk at Stanford many, many times. He's a genius when it comes to public speaking, and I love how it's written from a very empathetic point of view. The author really understands the challenges people go through with public speaking, the nerves that arise, and what they're going through in their head. So he gives you tactful things that you can do to speak on the spot, especially when you're under pressure. My biggest takeaway from this book was how important it is to have structure. So for example, if you're asked a question, immediately you're going to have a lot of thoughts in your head. So for example, what is your favorite app on your phone? I have Instagram, I have Spotify, I have YouTube, I like all these books, I like this one, I like that one, which one do I like? Now you're going in 50 different directions. So the book talks about how you can just streamline your thoughts into a structure that then allow you to speak. So for example, one of the ones that I use is a structure called point, reason, point, where the moment you're asked a question, you take some time, relax, allow yourself to gather your thoughts, and in the first sentence, you just try to answer the question. So instead of saying, oh, I've got all of these apps that I like, you could say, I like a lot of apps, but the one that I've been using a lot is Instagram. Now you've answered the question, now you know what to talk about. Then you can provide a reason. The reason I love Instagram is because ABC. And at the end, you can remind the audience of what your point was. So that's why Instagram will be my favorite app. This book talks about a lot of structures that you can use, pros, cons, your opinion, go in chronological order, past, present, future. When you know how to arrange your thoughts properly, you're able to speak very articulately. Because for a lot of people, the problem is not the vocabulary or the tone. The problem is there's too much information and it is unorganized in their head. They don't know how to organize the information when they speak. So oftentimes what they will do is they will try to organize it verbally. They will speak before the thoughts are organized. And now you're listening to them think out loud, and a lot of those thoughts don't sound great. So if you want to learn how to speak on the spot, be more comfortable, I would highly recommend reading this book. The next book, I'm really glad I bought this one. It's not a very popular one, but it's called The Media Training Bible. I love this book because I had a client that I was training to do interviews on TV, and it was really, really important to say the right thing at the right time and be perceived in a certain light because there's a lot of pressure. It's going to be recorded. Stakeholders will be seeing it. And then I picked up this book. What I love about this book is it has all of these tactful things that you can do to present yourself well on camera. I also like how it teaches you how to take a conversation or take a question that you've been asked and change it according to the way you want the message to sound. So if someone asks you a question, the answer to which would not help your position, you can change the way you answer that. He talks about how every message should contain 5 elements, and he uses the acronym CUBE A to talk about those. The message should be consistent, unburdened, brief, earworthy, and audience-focused. There are so many good tips in this book about how you can tackle any difficult question, how you can make sure your message gets across, and how you can tackle those difficult questions where they're trying to get some information out of you, and how not to look like a complete newbie on camera. If being specific with your words is important, if making sure you come across a certain way when you speak, this is a book you gotta have. And the last book that we have, if you are someone who delivers a lot of sales presentations, or you have to take technical data and explain it to people in an interesting way, you're gonna wanna read Everyday Business Storytelling. First of all, it's a beautiful book. Look at it, it's got so many pictures, it's got color, I'm a sucker for color, and it goes through how you can take technical information and put it into a story format. People who work in corporate think everything has to be about data and statistics and boring and put your audience to sleep, but there is a way to put it into a story format because human beings are trained to listen to stories, to tell stories, and that's how we take in information the best. The book gives such vivid examples of what your slides should look like, how to really get the audience to pay attention without being distracted. Now, having sat through many, many boring presentations, I'm always wondering, what the heck is the point of this? And I want to quote something from this book. It says, every fact, idea, or piece of data you include in your story, no matter how minor, must connect to your big idea. Everything. So if it does not feed the big idea of your presentation, cut it out. The book also gives you a step-by-step structure of how to put a story presentation together. This reminds me of those books you would read as a child that were so interesting because they had all of these pictures, everything was simple to understand. Overall, a really, really good book, especially when you pair it with this one here. These two alone will take care of every single corporate presentation you will ever have to give. These were 7 books that made me an articulate speaker. Go watch this video to see 9 more of these.